Hello students, welcome to Code with Vinay. In this video, we'll see how we can solve the ISC 2020 question number 1 in an efficient manner. Let us first understand the question. The question says, a fascinating number is one which when multiplied by 2 and 3 and then after the results are concatenated with the original number, the new number contains all the digits from 1 to 9 exactly once. There can be any number of zeros and those are to be ignored. Now let's see the example. The example given over here is 273. So the original number is 273, that is 273 multiplied by 1. Then we multiply the original number, that is 273 by 2, and we get the result 546. Then we multiply 273 by 3 and we get 819. Now if we concatenate these results, that is 273, then 546 and then 819, we get a number which is 273, 546, 819, and the good thing is that it is containing all the digits from 1 to 9 exactly once, and hence it is a fascinating number. Now, there are many ways of approaching this question. If you're thinking that you'll use a string, then please understand that that is not a very good approach. Why? Because string internally use array and strings are immutable. Meaning whenever you perform any concatenation on it, computer will create another array and copy the values. So that is actually pretty expensive. The next way is that we can use only numerical methods to get the job done, and numerical methods are usually very fast compared to especially the strings. And even this is not the best method. The best method actually employs bitwise operators, and in my opinion students are not very comfortable with bitwise operators, so I'll not be showing you the solution with bitwise operator. However, if I see sufficient interest, and you can show your interest in that solution by giving the comments below, then I might make a separate video on how to do this using a bitwise operator. But right now in this video we'll use only numerical method, no string methods, in order to solve this in an efficient manner without wasting a lot of memory. So the question is, you have to enter two positive integers m and n where there is a range given, that is the number must be greater than 99 and less than 10,000. If this is not satisfied, we'll say invalid input. Otherwise we'll check from in the entire range from m to n, both inclusive, how many fascinating numbers are there as well as the number themselves. So if you see the output, when m is equal to 100, n is equal to 500, the output is the fascinating numbers are, followed by the list of fascinating numbers found, and then we are saying the frequency of the fascinating number is followed by the frequency, which in this case is 4. Similarly for 900 and 5000, between the range 900 and 5000, these are the numbers and the frequency is 8. And in the same manner for 400 and 900, there is no fascinating number, the frequency is 0. And in case the range is wrong, like in this case we are getting a number less than 99, so we are saying invalid range. So this is the question. Now let us begin with the actual implementation. I'll create a new file. We'll call it ISC 2021 question1.java, and then we need some boilerplate code. So import java.util.asterisk, because we are going to enter the numbers. Then we'll have our class ISC 2021 question1. Then we'll have our main, and then we'll have to create a scanner object. So I'll say that scanner in is equal to new scanner system.in. Then this needs to be closed at the end, so in.close, and then we'll do the actual stuff. So first thing is we have to display the prompt input. So I'll say system.out.print, and then we'll say input followed by a colon followed by a tab followed by m equal to. Once this message is displayed, I'll take a variable m to store the value entered by the user. So int next int. So the value of m is entered, Then similarly, we need the value of n also. So for that, I'll save some time by just copying these two lines, pasting it again, and then changing the message accordingly. So the message will be input n is equal to, and then we'll enter the value of n. So the range has been entered. Once the range is entered, now we'll check whether the range which is entered by the user is within the limits prescribed by the question. So if m is less than equal to 99, or n is less than equal to 99, or m is more than or equal to 10,000, or n is more than or equal to 10,000, 1, 2, 3, then this is invalid. So we'll say system.out.println, and we'll say that, okay, in this case, the output is invalid range. Okay, one more thing, the question also said that m should be less than equal to n. So we'll say if m is more than n, then also the range is invalid. M has to be less than n. Okay, now once this is done, the actual thing will happen in the else block. So if we are reaching the else block, the number is in the range, that we are sure. And then we'll have to create, now that is what I always do. We'll have a fully object-oriented program. So we'll create a class, and since we are talking about fascinating numbers, so we'll create a class by the name of fascinating, and we'll say that, okay, fascinating obj is equal to new fascinating, and then to the constructor of the fascinating class, we'll pass the values m and n. So m comma n. So once this is done, our object will be created, and then we'll say system.out.println, and within println we'll say output colon, we'll give a slash t, and then we'll say obj. Now those of you who don't know, when you try to print an object, computer will try to look for a function by the name of toString within the class fascinating. So we'll create a toString function within the class fascinating, which will actually display the output later on. So once this is done, we have to display, let me check the question again, what we have to display. Once this is done, we have to say the frequency of fascinating number is. So I'll just copy down this message to save some time. So we'll go over here and we'll say system.out.println, and then we'll have the whole message displayed, and then we'll say plus, and then we'll create another function to get the frequency. So I'll say obj.get frequency, and this function will actually return the frequency of fascinating numbers found. So our overall structure is done. Now obviously we have to create the fascinating class, only then the program will function. So we'll go to the top and I'll say class fascinating, and within the class fascinating we'll have a constructor, so fascinating, and that will accept two things, int m comma int n. Now from here we'll store these within the instance variables, and let us create our instance variables. So instance variables should ideally be private so that they cannot be modified accidentally. So the variables which we need are, there will be one m, there will be one n. Other than that, we want to store the frequency, so we'll have the frequency. Now in order to store the frequency, what I'll do is I'll create a array, an integer array, which will be having 1 to 9, that is we will be having 9, the size of the array will be 9, where 0 will store the frequency of 1, the first location will store the frequency of 2, and so on. So let's go over here, and here we'll say private int, and since we are storing digits and we don't want to create a copy of this every time, so we'll say private static int digit. So our array is declared, and in order to store the output, we'll need one variable for storing the output also. So we'll say private string output. So this is also done. Now we go to the constructor, and within the constructor we'll say that okay, this dot m is equal to m, this dot n is equal to n, and once this is done, we'll also say that okay, frequency is initially equal to 0 because we haven't found any fascinating number. So right now the frequency is 0, and then we'll start the process of finding the fascinating number. So I'm creating a function process for that function. So we'll go and we'll create a function. We'll say private void process. Now this, within this process function, we'll take a loop from m to n. We'll check whether or not it is fascinating, and accordingly we'll update the variables. By update the variables, I means update the frequency as well as update the array and all. Okay, so let's begin. So the first thing is initially our output will be equal to nothing. Then we need a loop. Loop will run from m to n. So I'll say that okay, for int I is equal to m, I is less than equal to n, I plus plus. So the loop will run for the entire range given by the user. And then we'll make a function for is fascinating. So right now I'm just calling the function, we'll make it later. So we'll say if it is a fascinating number, that is if is fascinating I, what we'll do is we'll do two things. We'll say frequency plus plus to count that okay, that we have found a fascinating number, and then we'll add it to the output variable also. So I'll say output plus is equal to the variable, and if you see the original question, the fascinating numbers are being stored as a space separated value. There is no comma in between, we have a space. So I'll say plus a space. So a space is added. Now please note, since we are adding a space after each number found, there will be one extra space after the last number. So we'll eliminate that space because that doesn't look nice. So once we come out of the loop, we'll say output is equal to output dot trim. So trim function removes all the leading and trailing white spaces. So it will remove the trailing white space. So this takes care of the broad outline. Now we come to the function. So the function is fascinating. So we go down and now we create another function. I call it private static. It has to return a true and a false, so boolean, and then we'll say is fascinating, and then let's say the number is num. So int num. Now within this, the actual thing will happen. Now we have only declared the array, but we want the array to be of a particular size and filled with all zeros. So what I'll do initially, every time the function is fascinating is called, we want to have the arrays filled with zeros. So here I'll say that okay, digits is equal to new int 9. We are saying 9 because we have to ignore 0. So we'll only take from 1 to 9. So this is done. So as soon as the computer sees this line, a new array will be created, and initially it will be all zeros. Okay, so this is done. Now the interesting part starts. So once the question says that we have to concatenate, but please understand, it's not the concatenation which is important. What is important over here is that whether in these products each digit is occurring only once or not. You may do it without actually concatenating it, and that is what we'll do. We'll also save some memory in the process because again we'll require a long variable to concatenate it. So that's not actually required. So what we'll do over here is that I'll create a boolean variable status which will actually store the return value, and here I'll create another function. We'll call it inspect digits. So there is a function inspect digits which will inspect the number multiplied by 2 and the number multiplied by 3. So we'll call the inspect digits function with the number, then we'll call it again inspect digits, we'll call it again, and this time we'll say number into 2, and then we'll call it the third time inspect digits, and this time we'll pass number into 3. So our idea over here is that we'll inspect digits. Digits means digits of the number multiplied by 1, the number multiplied by 2, and the number multiplied by 3. We'll keep on tracking whether or not any digit is being repeated. As soon as any digit is repeated, we'll return false. And if, please note, we are separating it by an AND. So if any of these function returns false, the whole thing will become false. And if none of these return false, then we'll check whether each digit is occurring only once or not. So before we proceed, let us make the inspect digits function so you can understand what I'm thinking. So what we'll do is we'll create one more function. We'll say private static return type is obviously Boolean, and we'll call it inspect digits. And let's say we are getting the product inside the function. So once we are inside, initially our digits array is all zeros, right? So we need to take out digits one by one. So for that, what we'll do is we'll have to create a variable to take out the digit. So I'll say, let's say the variable is 1, so digit, and then we'll have to take out digit by digit. So I'll say that, okay, int temp is equal to product. So we'll start with the product, and till temp is more than 0, that is how we normally take out the digits, we'll keep on saying temp divided by is equal to 10. And then within the loop, we'll say that, okay, digit is equal to temp modulus 10. That will take out the last digit. Now, once we have got the digit out, we only have to work on it if it is more than zeros, because zeros are to be ignored. So we'll say that if digit is more than 0, then we'll work on it. And what is our work? Work is that first we'll check. Now, please understand, digit, the size of the array digit is 9, 0 to 8. We don't want to take zeros. So if the number is 1, we want to maintain the count of 1 in the digits of 0. So we'll have to say digit minus 1. So I'll just check first that if digits of digit minus 1, if it is already equal to 1 and we have again found the same digit, it means that it's a repetition. And if it's a repetition, we'll say return false. So as soon as we get a repeated digit, we'll return false so that we don't continue. But if the digit is not already there, we'll store the digits. We'll increase the count. We'll say, okay, digit minus 1 plus plus. Or we can just also say equal to 1. So first time it will become 1. Next time, if you try to make it 1, we'll check whether it is already 1. And if it is already 1, the digit is being repeated. And if it is being repeated, we'll return true. And if the digit is not being repeated, when the whole thing is complete, we'll say return true. So we'll keep on calling this function with 3 times. That is, first time it will be called with the original number. Where is it? The first time it will be called with the original number. If there is any repetition, we'll return false. Computer will not check the remaining thing. The answer will be false. Otherwise, we'll call it with number into 2. Again, we'll check for the digits. If there is any repetition, we'll return false. Otherwise, it will return true. And then the computer will check for number into 3. Now, once all this is done and we have reached the line. So if you are reaching this line and status is false, that means that if we reach this line and the status is false, that is, if status equal to false, that means that there is repetition. So we'll straight away say return false. No need to check it further. But if you are reaching this line, that is line number 26, it means that now we have to check whether or not each digit is occurring once or not. So for that, what we'll do, I'll use an enhanced for loop to traverse through the entire array. So I'll say count colon digits. So first time when the loop will run, count will be equal to digits of 0, then digits of 1, then digits of 2, and so on. And we'll check that, okay, if count is not equal to 1, that means that all digits are not 1. Some of them are 0 might be. So we'll say return false. And if the loop completes, then we'll say return true. So this will take care of the is fascinating part. Are we forgetting anything? I don't think so. Okay, yes, we are forgetting. Now we need a function which can actually display the output, that is the toString, and we need a function which can actually return the frequency. So now we have to make those 2 public functions. So I'll go in the end and I'll say public int get frequency, and this get frequency function will simply return the frequency. And then we have to make a toString function which will be called when we try to print the object. So we'll say public string toString, and here we have to do some extra work, because please note there is a message also which says that the fascinating numbers are. So we have to display this message as well. So what I'll do is, in order to save time, I'll copy this line, and we'll first say that, okay, string header is equal to, and we'll just store the header over here, and there has to be a new line after this. So I'll say /n, and once this is done, now we'll check that, okay, if output is equal to nothing, that means there is no output, then we'll say return header plus, and the message was nil in this case, so I'll display nil. Otherwise we'll say return header plus the output which we have found. So I think this should do the job, and if it doesn't, then we'll debug the program. Okay, so let's run the program, but before we run the program, let me see the ranges which were given. So the first range was m is 100, n is 500. So 100, 500. Expected answer is 192, 219, 273, 327, and the frequency is 4. So let's try this out. 100, 500 is the input. So we go over here, we run it, and we say 100, 500. Numbers are 192, 219, 327. Okay, right? And the frequency. So it's working for the first case. Then let's try out the second case. Second case is 900 to 5000, and the expected output is this, and the frequency is 8. So 900 to 5000. Run it again, and this time we'll say 900 and 5000. Press enter. Okay, so this is also working. Let us try the third input also. So 400 to 900, and we are expecting the answer to be nil. 400 to 900. So we'll again go over here, and I again run the program, and we say from 400 to 900. We press enter, and it is nil, and the frequency is 0. And just for the sake of completeness, the last input 7450, which is wrong because it should be more than 99 for it to be valid. So we'll run it for 70 and 450. So we go over here, I'll run the program, and then I'll say 70 and 450, and we get invalid range, which is correct. So this is how you can write this program in an efficient manner without taking a string array, or for that matter any string operation. So the program runs quite efficiently. Now this is still not the best method. The best method is when you use bitwise operator, and if you are interested in knowing that solution as well, please do write so in the comments. Thank you.